Hello, messy homesteaders. This is the continuation of the prior video in which I was sharing my debrief from this week's fast. I've posted them as of the same day so that you can watch both of them if you like. The reason I have posted them separately is because there's no timer on this to tell me how long the video is, and there's something new that was going on either on YouTube or on Zoom where it said we're not going to upload something that's more than 15 minutes. So, given the crankiness, this is just how we're going to do it. Um, but I promised you that I would show you how I track my fasts, and this is what has developed. At first, this was just to track my temperatures at different times, and you can see why I would want to do that because I got down to 94.3, like really stupid numbers that are like not very good. But now I am up to the 97s, high 97s during fasting. So this is really good progress, and this shows me the progress. The way that I code this is I put things in red if they're a problem, and I put them in green if they're particularly good. So anything 97 or over for me is really good. Um, and and each day, if there was like a high, I would do that one, even if it was like upper 96 range, not on this sheet, but on another one. But this is just what has developed that works for me. There's lots of ways to do it, of course. Um, if you see the areas in green, these are areas where I'm dry fasting. Areas in blue are where I'm water fasting. And mostly I have not included any times when if I'm eating here and then trying to fast the rest of the night, but then I end up getting really hungry and eat here, then this all stops being fasting, right? Like this was fasting time up to the time I ate, but since I ate, then it's no longer, you can no longer package it like that. The other thing I have here, and this will be hard to see if you are colorblind, I'm sorry to say, but the red on green is, I know, pretty impossible to see. The red outline here is when I am taking MMS or CDS, chlorine dioxide. So that requires that I be drinking water because the chlorine dioxide goes in water. It suspends in water, and so that's how you intake it. And so you can see that, and the number by it just means like how many drops I put into the water over that period of time. So basically my dose for the day. Um, and then you see a couple of other things. If I was particularly active, so if I was um, doing kind of house chores for a little while. This is a really long time for me to be up and around, and so I noted that here. And you can barely see it, but it is listed in like a white box here. Um, and then if it was a really dangerous temperature, I kind of tried to bold it and make a good note of it so that I could keep an eye on it. Um, if I was sleeping, you see that here. If this time I was resting but never achieved sleep, so I put that in anyway because I was trying to sleep, but it didn't work. Um, I and it looks like there I did not. It looks like maybe I was eating a bit around there, which is why this wouldn't be green. Um, these days I was not fasting at all. These days that are in white, and um, let's see. There's one other thing. This was just a day I had an orange, which is unusual for me right now, being in low carb land. So I just wanted to make a note of that. But you can see if I was active or like today I managed to take a walk. I wanted to note that when you're in a fast, a dry fast particularly, the body really asks for you to be really still and asks for movement kind of at the same time. It really longs to be outside. And I did this walk outside, so that's why I made a note of it. But you can see the last few days and what I do, just sort of the at a glance look, I can see at any time kind of how long I fasted, how long the breaks were, and so forth. And these are, if you think this looks like way too much fasting, you'd be right if I was fasting all day. The safety net that we have here is that these days in yellow are intermittent fasts, which means that the fasting is in my case, over 12 hours. For if you're doing water fasting, you really need to count it as like at least 16 hours, because it just takes longer for the autophagy to start up or ketones to kind of get going. But if you're water fasting, it really doesn't take much more than 10 hours. So basically, if I did 12 hours or more, then I tracked that. Um, so this was cumulative fasting hours and then intermittent fasting. But like if I was in a multi-day fast, then I'd want to keep an eye on like how many hours are we really talking about? So I did 11 this day, but by the next day it was 31, by the next day it was 55, by the next day it was 79, by the next day it was 101. But these other days, I want to be capturing, okay, anything over 10 hours I write down because that's the relevant number for dry fasting. I also started noting my weight, and this is how I discovered that I'm always, 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 no matter what, heavier by about a pound and a half at midday. And that's whether I'm eating or not. It's whether I'm active or not. It's whether I've had any water or not. It's just always true, which was really interesting to learn. My weight was higher here a few days ago, and that was also that was probably before I did all the eating, but I did quite a good bit of eating on this day. And I didn't really know why. I was kind of concerned about it, but I thought, well, it is what it is. I mean, I was just really, really hungry. But then didn't need anything to eat at all for the entire next day, except right here is where I had that fish that I mentioned in the last video, which is about 250 calories. And then again, I wasn't hungry again. I was a little bit out of sorts. Yesterday I was feeling a little unstable or weak or something, and so my MCT oil had just come in the mail, and I thought, well, let me try that, and I did a little bit of that, half a teaspoon, and then another teaspoonful, and that really helped. And I just thought, when I'm feeling like that, the question is, do I end the fast, or do I take something to see if I can maintain the fast longer? And since the very first time I fasted, I thought that feeling like that was a big problem and was unsafe, I ended the fast. And then I learned, like 4 hours later, that I didn't need to do that, that I could have just had a little water, had a little fat, had something to see if I could prolong the fast safely. So I did that yesterday. And then you can see, I know it's kind of hard to see really with the light green and the light blue, but there's light green here, light blue here, then light green again. And if I go all the way up, you can see I was maintaining a really good temperature here for someone who has been getting into these kinds of temperatures when they're fasting. I'm keeping really good temperatures here. My ketones were good after this fish for almost a day. And then, but even when I took the MCT oil, it did not hike up my ketones again. I'll say that. They were pretty mild the rest of the day. So we're talking like in the 30s on a breath meter, which is about a 3 on your urine test strip. So definite ketones. It's not like a 0.5 on the blood meter or anything. You're talking about probably a 2 or a 2 to a 4. But then I slept, and this is really saying something because you see how small this sleep moment is. That's because the cortisol was kicking in as it would after a day of dry fasting, but because apparently I needed the fuel that came with that fish, I got to the cortisol level anyway. And and then I took this MCT oil and it did not hike things up, which was interesting. But by morning, I was at 99 and I was feeling it. I was feeling like, wow, like when you first get to 99, it really kind of hits you in the face. And 99 is as far as my breath meter goes up. So it's kind of like in the urine test when you get up to that top marker, it doesn't tell you anything beyond that. It just tells you you're really high right then on your ketones. So, but unlike the urine test, the breath meter, and unlike the blood meter, the breath meter actually just measures what you actually used and not just kind of what's randomly floating around in your urine or in your blood, regardless of whether you utilized it well or not. So it's very good. Um, then you can see I did a little bit of drinking water. Initially, I didn't drink very much this day. This day and this day, I actually drank not a quart, a gallon of water in like 3 hours. I mean, like a lot of water. I did mine with stevia. And I mean stevia leaf, not stevia extract or anything clear or white. Stevia leaf. I've been trying stevia leaf for about a week, and I was mostly finding that it was probably an adaptogen because it was giving me a very heavy stimulant feeling at first. But then it was really feeling like it was oxygenating my blood. The stimulant factor was going down, but the way that it was seeming to oxygenate my blood, sort of like how wheatgrass used to do when I used to have it, it was very much that kind of feeling, but less intense than wheatgrass, and I can't handle wheatgrass anymore anyway. So I just kind of thought, well, I'm trying. I was just kind of playing with fasting on this day, right? And so that's when I started to put a little bit of the stevia, half teaspoon or something per quart of water. And that just worked really well. And because in English we haven't studied stevia properly, I can't find any nutrition information about it, any medicinal information about it at all. But for my body, it really kept me in this fast. The electrolyte action was very clear. I didn't need any sodium. I still don't need any extra sodium. I still, haven't had any potassium or magnesium other than my brief Epsom baths before I did my charcoal baths. Um, so I haven't needed very much at all, which tells me that stevia is a good electrolyte for me. Also, again, the stimulant factor went down, so it feels good to have it, but it doesn't make me crave sweets and it doesn't do anything weird. Um, so then today, you can see this is a very long sleep period, just like is kind of normal for me. And what that tells us is that my cortisol level was back to kind of a pleasant level, which is a very big deal for someone with an adrenal disorder and who's already spent for cortisol. Usually, cortisol is kind of how the body makes heat to do a lot of the repair work during a dry fast. But you can see I held my heat well this time, but without the cortisol overload, which was also just more pleasant. So then my body was really craving being outside and actually taking a walk, and I took a longer than usual walk. It actually opted for this instead of the inside walking videos that I do a lot of times. So that was a big deal. And then it did want some more MCT. I wasn't feeling too good around 3. And um and it seemed like it was time to end the fast, but I wanted to, again, I try to give it a couple of hours, give it some kind of supplementation to see if that just helps us roll through it. I went to the store to get some good refueling food for when I get done. And then I came back and I was still feeling kind of poorly, but mostly just I'm getting a better sense intuitively of like when my body says, okay, we're done with this for right now. And I didn't want to push it too many days or too hard because I'm not at the beginning of my cycle right now. You can see this is days 18 through 20 of my cycle. And I don't know, my last 2 cycles have been different from one another. One was 23 days, which is what I've had for a long time. But then it seems that the dry fasting sort of fixed it and took me back to 28 days, which would be more normative. Um, so I don't know if I am nearing the end of my cycle or not, or if I'm in the middle of the cycle. And so I especially did not want to mess around too much with this. And I wouldn't want to mess up my hormones or anything. So that's that. What I did to end the fast was I was pretty hungry when I got back from the store. I mean, it's just Walmart. Walmart does not make me hungry, but I was hungry because I had just, burned some more um, fuel and was kind of feeling a little under the weather. And so I had a moment of having some Chalk Zero chocolate. I should make a video about just level setting so you know what to expect with Chalk Zero chocolate. I had 3 pieces of that, and I had, which is about, I mean, it's pretty heavy. It's about 350 calories, by the end of that story, but, or 400, more like 400 calories, um, which is a lot to refeed with, but there's no sugar in it, and there's no carbs in it, and, it's mostly fiber, and a little bit of caffeine, not as much as you would think. I was surprised how little caffeine and sort of cacao hit I got, which was good for me because I don't really do caffeine. So, um, but I did the filling off way of refeeding. Since I've already been doing the water, I wasn't even sure if my body needed to do the refeed carefully because I thought, well, I've already got stuff digesting and in my gut and so forth. But I don't have any bulk, and I haven't had anything that I've needed it to actually digest. I've just had liquid. So sure enough, it did need some time on that. I did the compote, but without any added sugar. So I did 2 dry apricots and 2 dry figs, that I boiled in some water for about 15 minutes, and then I drank the water, and then I very slowly ate the fruit. In his, usually you would not eat the fruit until the next day of refeeding, not the first day. But again, I was trying to determine whether I could handle the bulk or not. I would say yes and no was the answer to that. I did have some pretty fast elimination of that, but not so fast that it was a problem. And then after that, I have, opted for some slippery elm bark, which is a very, very good, fiber prebiotic, and it's very good at lining the gut, and it fixes both constipation and diarrhea. It's the only thing I know that does that. So I have done that, and that starts binding to anything that might be left over that needs moving out, which is very important when you're starting your refeed, um, because if there is anything lingering, especially if you're in a dry fast, you would want to do that. But because all that stuff is dried, which is why you want to do a good colon cleanse before you do a proper dry fast. But since this was not a proper dry fast, you can see there was a lot of liquid in my body at different times. I wasn't as concerned about that safety wise. But after this, I will do this, which is, an intestinal drawing formula by, Health Force, and it contains a lot of the things in it that I use anyway. It contains ground chia and charcoal and some moringa and slippery elm bark. So I use all those things anyway, but using it together at the end of the fast is a really good safety measure. It both adds bulk so that you can start populating the gut again and having something for your probiotics, your fermented milk, or whatever you're going to have that's fermented to eat on once it gets into the gut, and populate that gut back with healthy flora or fauna, depending on how you view it. But it also, the charcoal and all those things will bind to any impurities, so that those can move out of the body, um, in a efficient way. So that's what I did. And you can see here, I started my DMSO, which is a byproduct of sap, um, and which I started doing to heal my injuries, which has been amazing. I'll do a different video on that. But I started that this day. You just do it topically. You can take it internally. It's perfectly safe to do that, but clinical studies have shown that it's just as effective to just put on transdermally, and that it'll suck everything in, for you. So I just do that. If I had a broken bone or something, I probably would take it internally also. But this time I just needed to do it topically. So you can see I've, made notes of that. And then I just see at a glance here, did I intermittently fast, and the color coding here, intermittent fast that was dry, intermittent fast that was, wet and dry, blue and green. Um, these I don't call intermittent fasts, because of the way they operated in my body. They operated like a proper dry fast, and you can see I was sort of, like, which way do you put it on that? So this one measured, how many consecutive hours, proper do we have? We have 27 from here to here. But altogether, this day and this day, we have 44, which is relevant again, since biologically it operated that way in my body this time. And then we ended up with consecutive 45 or 62. Um, we're including that, we're counting sort of in water fast terms. So I had water these days and I had liquid oil, right? So nothing with fiber, but liquid oil. So, so that's how I did it. So anyway, I hope that's helpful as you're looking at kind of how to do this, or if you have other ways that you do it. Like I say, I'm very rigorous and orthodox in my believing the experts, and I'm very careful about how I execute my fasts based on those kind of absolutes, and based on those thousands of other people's experiences. But also, I at this point feel confident in my intuition on this and in my ability to improvise safely within those constraints. So, anyway, that is it for now, and we'll see you again another time.